for your kind words. Allow me to speak English. I know that my English is even worse than my Spanish, but out of deference with the foreign guests that they have had a very long day, and they are the brave ones that have been here until the very end. I must confess I feel very comfortable in the role of being the last man standing in the room. Because you know that by now you can say whatever you want because nobody listens anymore. People are too tired, so it doesn't matter. I can say every nonsense that crosses my mind and nothing happens. So I know that you have only one expectation from this speech, which is brevity, and brief I intend to be now. I will start from, well, if I have the time, and I will say something at the end about the public space, but basically I wanted to focus on 3 points. The first one departs from something that Zoila, who has already said many of the things I had in mind beforehand. This dichotomy, fundamentalism, secularism, they are like the two sides of the same coin. They are terms that are susceptible of different interpretations and understandings. And this is something we must realize, is that they are not univocal terms. And I think that the purpose of including this topic in this conference was to underscore the idea of radicalism that is implicit in both of them. So we have religious radicalism, we have secular or atheistic rather than secular radicalism that is characterized by an attitude that tends to exclude religion from the public space, from public life. Therefore, they share something in common, something that is very deep and very important, is the total lack of empathy, a total lack of understanding of the other's position. They characterize by being a sort of totalitarian view or monolithic view of reality. For radical religious people, they have the owners of the sole truth, and then they misinterpret the gospel sentence about the truth will let you free. And so if I have the truth, then you will swallow my truth, whether you like it or not. That is my way of making you free. And on the opposite side, the anti-religious radicalists or the secular or atheistic radicalists, they just are convinced that religion, all religions, every religion is nonsense. Both things are totally false. And they fail to understand how important religion, conscience, morals are in the life of many people. They are part of their true, deep identity. That for many people, these morals, religious perspective of life, this is an essential part of their right to the pursuit of happiness. This is one of the 3 rights mentioned in the Declaration of Independence of the United States, which is one of my favorite political documents of all times. And we don't talk too much about the pursuit of happiness. We should do it more often. And we talk a lot about the emphasis on plurality, diversity, pluralism in society. That is fine, that is important, but we sometimes forget the idea, the fact, rather than the idea, that pluralism and diversity is the necessary consequence of freedom. The emphasis should be on freedom, not on pluralism per se. Is freedom what matters? Is freedom what is an integral part of our right to the pursuit of happiness? When we fail to understand that, we fail to understand diversity, and as a consequence, discrimination emerges. It's something natural in society. And direct or indirect discrimination, as Zoila was pointing out, subtle or not so subtle discrimination, religious or other types of discrimination, it emerges as something natural. Now, when we reach this point, we may want to ask ourselves about what is the state's responsibility in all this? And one immediate answer is, it was pointing out this afternoon from different perspectives, education. The state is responsible to try to educate society in certain values, to inform society through the educational system, through the mass media, about the reality, not the fictions of different religions, especially those minority religions, those less typical religions existing in the country. And it's also a duty of the state through the education system to instill the idea of respect. I mean deep respect, real respect for people. Real respect is easy to respect people we agree with. It's not difficult to be in agreement with a friend. That is easy. For the difficult thing is to respect people that we disagree profoundly with their ideas, that we may even despise their ideas. We are not obliged to respect the ideas of people. We may well despise the ideas of people. The important thing is that we respect the right of those people. They have the same right to have their ideas, even if we have divergent views of life. And that's the duty of the state. And I think that is a very, Kishan Manoj is here from OSCE, and he knows quite well this document drafted within the ODIHR a few years ago, sponsored by the Spanish government in those times. That is the Toledo Guiding Principles on Education, on teaching about religions or belief. This is a very interesting document, and it is a powerful guide about the responsibility of the state, because this task, this educational task of the state, is not easy at all. Sometimes it's the significance and the possibility of this neutral education about religion in public schools is taken for granted. This is a very difficult thing to achieve. It requires teachers very well trained and with a very high level of moral and professional integrity of things. And so I recommend you the reading of that document if you have not already done it. But there is another answer to state responsibility, which is to create the appropriate legal framework for the exercise of religious freedom. And I say the appropriate. It's easy to create legal frameworks. Everybody is doing that all the time, too often, actually. But a framework that actually makes possible the exercise on equal terms of freedom of religion and belief for everybody, minority or majority, typical or atypical. And a legal framework that protects every individual and every institution from discrimination, that protects them from anti-religious hate speech, for instance, which is, we tend not to tolerate any type of hate speech except that hate speech that is anti-religious, that with religion. Sometimes I have the feeling that, and it's a feeling that I also believe I detect in some of the positionings of the European Court of Human Rights, that freedom of religion is a kind of the poor relative between fundamental freedoms, the one that nobody invites to the parties, and if they get invited by chance to the party, nobody speaks to them and remains alone. It's no one. No, it's just another fundamental freedom with their specific characteristic. It must be treated as such. And we have to, as scholars or as public officials, we have to contribute to develop the sensitivity of different societies and states towards the needs of religious freedom. You don't have to be a religious person to do that. You just need to be a person and a citizen. But I don't want to go into the realm of Juan Antonio. I will get lost easily. And Zoila said something very interesting about the laicidad, the secularity of the state. Sometimes the secularity is taken the wrong way, in the sense that it's taken as excluding religion from public spaces. It's taken as something that is the main and almost the only characteristic of the state. That is totally false. The secularity of a state, which is a big achievement of secular and Western democracies, nobody can deny that, is just a characteristic of the state that serves two purposes. One, to prevent the undue influence of religion in the government, which is a need. We have experienced that very often in this continent. We tend to forget. We had that need not so long ago. And the second purpose, it serves to guarantee the freedom of religion of every individual and every community. When you interpret the secularity of the state in a way that undermines religious freedom, something has gone wrong in this interpretation of secularity of the state. You have created a myth of secularity, and this is a false myth. And then the third point I want to touch very briefly, I know it's a very delicate point, but I don't want to omit it. We have to, someone said through the screen some minutes ago, we have to be aware of the elephant in the room. We cannot ignore it. And I'm referring to the easy connection we get in Western societies between Islam and violence, between fanaticism. Let's speak frankly about that. This exists, this is the problem we have to face. We cannot just make blah, 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 French style, with all due respect, like the 2004 law against religious symbols in public schools. They disguise the very purpose of the law in general terms. No, let's speak about that. This is a problem in Western societies. And I don't want to go there, and I don't have the time, and neither you have the wish to listen to me in this regard, but I want to mention one point. The connection between violence and religion is not a Muslim specialty. It has happened very often with all religions in the world, or almost all religions in the world. Certainly Christianity was one of them. Today I couldn't be present in the session this morning because I had a long class, in my last class of this year, and I couldn't miss that. And we were discussing, one of the things we started discussing is, started to be a ranking of religions and the worst villains in the history of mankind. I will let aside the villains, but religions probably, no other religion has killed more people in the name of God than Christianity, different types of Christianity in the history of mankind. We should be aware of this, and that happened in this continent and in this country. So it's not that with that we have to justify what Islam, some people in the name of Islam are doing. But we have to be aware that this may happen with any religion. And the problem is not that this person is Muslim or not. The problem is that this person is, first, there are two things we have to keep in mind. This person is not a believer, this is just a killer. There are different things. And the second thing is, the problem of Islam and violence can be solved only by Muslims. The states can reduce the effects of the problem, can mitigate the consequences, can try to educate people, to inform society. But this is the problem to be faced by Muslims. Until Muslim leaders take the reins, until they speak out, until they stand up very firmly, until not just the leaders, the masses of Muslim people go to the street when phenomena such as the Charlie Hebdo attack happened, until that day, this problem cannot be solved. Until the Muslims themselves say, the people that kill on the name of Islam, say, get off, you are not a Muslim, you are just an assassin. And they have to be them, not we. We cannot take that role because we lack the credibility, we lack the leverage to do that. So we have to be honest in our dialogue with Muslim people in this regard, because otherwise we are just talking about flowers and this type of thing. Public space, very, very simply and very, very shortly, I promise to be short. Public space first. We talk about public space as if it were one thing. There are many different kinds of public spaces. The street is not the same that the public hospital, and the public hospital is not the same that a public school, the public school is not the same that a legislature or a courtroom. And each one of them has specific characteristics, and that requires different types of accommodation of religion in those public spaces. Second, let's not forget that the public, by definition, means the space of all. It's not the state's space, it's the space of society. Thank you very much.